So, just to let everybody know, I am not a professional demonstrator or teacher, so I am just a normal person like everybody else that just likes to make stuff. So I'm just gonna show you how I make boxes, which is gonna be probably completely different than any other way you've ever seen if you've read all the box books. I don't do it anything like that. I mean, for me, I have every book that's out there, and it was very difficult until I just put down the books and just started making it, because trying to follow directions and how somebody else does something and constantly looking in the book on how to do this and how to do that just doesn't flow. And the best way to learn how to make boxes is just stand in front of the lathe and make them and keep screwing them up. In the beginning, I ruined 3 or 4 out of 10. After 300, 400, 500 boxes, you ruin like maybe 1 in 50. Still, they get easier. They're very frustrating in the beginning because they're fussy. It's just something that you just have to keep at. So I have a distinctive style that's a beaded box. That's what we're going to do tonight. We're not going to get into the whole design thing or any of that stuff. That can be an entirely different presentation. So I'm probably going to talk a lot to keep from getting nervous. So I really appreciate it if people ask questions. I know that people don't ask questions, but ask some questions. I use a little different system. Most people use chucks. I've never made a box with a chuck, the standard chuck. So back in the day when I joined this club, there was a man, Dan Ackerman, and he had invented a system for making boxes. He had a production wood turning business, and he made these little screw mandrels and glue blocks that have these little inserts in it. So what they see, is that what I see on the monitor? Okay, you're not going to be able to see it, but they have little 3/8 by 16 inserts in. And I'll be passing stuff around, so some unfortunate person in the front row is going to have to be the person that comes up and gets stuff to pass around. I have prepared these blanks ahead of time, just for the sake of convenience. The only time I use CA glue is if it's going to be something start to finish in the same day or in the same couple of days. I use Titebond glue and a clamp. I know the thing's not going to pop off. CA glue can pop off sometimes. And the thing with CA glue, it doesn't glue the same way that Titebond does. Titebond soaks into the wood. You have a clamp. There's no void between the two pieces. With CA glue, you have a viscous void between the wood and both pieces, and it can squeal like a pig when you're turning it. And it looks bad. You know what I'm talking about, man, because you're laughing about it. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm going to get started. The second thing that is most important about boxes is the kind of tool rest you use. I did a demonstration in Portland where I forgot my tool rest, and I had to use this clunky thing, and I sniveled about it all night long. You will never make a good box using this gigantic clunky tool rest. You can't. All night, I had to use the very end of it because that was the only place I could get my finger around it. And yeah, so ditch your tool rest first. Get one smaller that you can get your fingers around. And so I'm just going to start churning and start talking. I usually start on the bottom. And there's a bunch of different shapes, but you can manipulate. Of the boxes I have here, all the beaded boxes, every single one of them is a different shape, but it's all the same shape. It's the same shape, just manipulated different with different proportions. So you can stick with one shape and have 25 different styles if you manipulate the proportions right. And the only way you're going to know that is by making a whole bunch of them and line them up. Anybody that's been to my shop knows there's a shelf eye level that's like 10 feet long. That's a whole line of boxes. And That's how you figure it out. You're like, I like this part of one, I like that part of one, I don't like that one, and you figure it out. If you're just gonna fool around and make one or two here and there, you're probably never gonna get it, because you'll never get past the frustration. So I am gonna start with turning the tenon. So, thanks. So, and there's one speed for boxes all the way up. And this thing feels like a hurricane blowing on you. I just do everything by eye. I don't measure anything. So what I'm going to start off with is what I call a Tenon Cutter. It's part of the little specialized tools I designed for boxes. One end has a Tenon Cutter on it, and the other end has the lid recess on it. So you have to start with your tenon. Are you guys hearing an echo? Because I'm hearing one really bad. Is there a way we can tweak the microphone, or? Huh? You okay? Yeah. Is there any way we can fix that? Yeah, you did video on Zoom. You should have showed up. All right. So I'm just going to start with the whole tenon cut. This is going to be a traditional box with the tenon on the bottom of the box. These are both demonstration boxes, so this is what we're going to end up with at the end of the night. It's something that looks similar to this. And you can even see that even though these are the same shape, they're completely different because they're proportioned different. The tenon is on the bottom. That's the traditional. You're used to the way I do them now. Yeah, it's at the top of the box. I know, but I do them now with the tenon on the lid, which is different. That's more confusing. That's a more advanced thing. So this is a traditional box that has a tenon on the bottom and the lid recess on the top. And you know, the biggest thing with boxes is the proportion. And you know that you hit the proportions, even though this is a demonstration box and it's thicker than it would be for a real box. When you pop the lid off, the shoulder here on this bead and this tenon, they're the same thickness. This bead here and the rebate for the lid recess, they're all the same thickness. They all match on all four. And you know that you nailed your proportions right. And the hardest thing about boxes are you make them from the inside out, but you have no outside shape yet. So you have to be able to visualize a little bit. And it comes with time. Your first ones are going to have thick lids. It always looks like it's deeper than it is. You just got to keep doing it. So it is, how late do I have till? 9 o'clock. All right. I'm going to have to go fast, but I won't have to rush too bad. So you just got to start with your tenon. This is going to be a bunch of back and forth cutting because it has a bead on it. So, and this is what I mean by a tool rest that you can get your hands around or your fingers around, and you get a better shot going down. This is how I get, can everybody see that? Probably can't. The camera's here instead of coming here. Is there any way we can get a camera shot? I don't block the light though, huh? Oh, there you go. So you'll see, the biggest thing you will notice when I cut is I'm going to go out here where you can see it. I will have my fingers around the post or this top bar. And if you're trying to cut a bead like this, or like this, like a traditional wood turning cut, you have zero control. When you have 3 fingers around the post, I have my forefinger, my middle finger, and my thumb all connected to the tool. And I have the back of the handle connected to me. You're like a machine lathe then. If you just sit there and you're trying to be unbalanced and you're trying to make your cut like this, the tool's going to skate around on you. You're not going to have a whole lot of precision. This is a difficult thing for some people because so many books and so many people tell you you got to have the tool rest right next to the wood. You can't have any gaps there. I'm telling you, you can have this thing an inch away from the wood. It's not going to be a problem. So that's the biggest thing you will notice with me is I always have 2 or 3 fingers around the tool and it's always locked on the tool rest. And my arm, the tool handle or something will always be locked into my stomach. I'll have my elbow tucked in. I'll have my feet apart. And that's how you make super precise cuts. This is a normal 1/8" beading tool. People tell you you can't cut deeper than like the bead with this. I'm going to show you just how wrong that is. I'm already a bead and a half deep. I'm 2 beads deep. I'm like 2.5 beads deep. But that's because of the precise control. You have to alternate this cut back and forth between the bead and the tenon. You have to get your shape. And this is another one of our tools. This is called the diamond tool, or the teardrop tool. This is a tool that Dave designed and made. It complements the beading tools. It cuts the second half of a bead, blends the bead into the rest of the body of the work. Can you guys see this okay? Because I'm looking at the monitor and I can't tell because it's kind of small. And you don't have to keep doing this because the stuff, the shavings and all this stuff gets in the way of you seeing. Like I can't even see the end of the tool. This is horrible right here. Tones had the ultimate fix for this. It's not very pretty, but it's very effective. It's like a piece of pie almost. Piece of wood, cut round, half the size of this motor, stuck right here, about 3 inches high, from here to here, and it prevents that hurricane of wind blowing on you. Because it's blowing stuff into my cut. Still have that piece of wood. I have a new lathe now. I'm gonna have to make another one. It's just gonna be a little prettier. It's a ton of wind. No, dude, go ahead. You don't need to. No. I snivel about a lot of things. It's just part of the deal. And anybody that's been to my shop knows that I tweak everything. Even something brand new, I start tweaking it and changing stuff just because, I mean, you should have your stuff the way it works for you. Not the way some corporate tool person tells you the way it should be. Has anybody ever seen a turning from Robert Sorby or Henry Taylor or any of those people? No. And you can see how many beads I have cut with this tool. See how short this thing is? These things come about this long. I don't. I've tried a few times, and I know some people say that they have success with it, but trying to drag your tool across a hone or a stone and keep it perfectly flat without moving or changing it any is hard to do unless you're a machine. So for me, I just hit it on the grinder. You can turn the grinder on and you can immediately turn it off and you can sharpen this thing just with the wheel spinning down. You barely have to touch it. I usually sharpen it pretty much every time I use it just because, I mean, you want your beads to be nice. Like you guys can't see this, but I mean, If I sanded this bead with 600 grit, it would be rougher than it is right now that I just cut it. And that's because I keep it super sharp. But I have taken the hone and cleaned up the sides a little bit sometimes, get them a little bit tighter together. Don't be afraid to tweak your tools if you don't like the way they're working. Pull out of the beading cuts fast, because if you pull out real slow and you twitch it off, the corner is going to take a chunk out of your bead. Ask me how I know that one. I think that'll probably be good for now. One thing you'll notice, there's no long handles here at all. Sometimes even these 8-inch handles are too long for me. For this kind of small work, shorter, smaller handles are far better that you can have in front of you. You have no control over this beading tool. If you have this in a 12-inch handle and you're trying to hold it back here, it just, every movement is magnified the closer it goes to the tool. You have control when you have it up here, and your hand is as close to the work as you can get it. And if you have a big long handle sticking out here, it's a counterweight that's bobbing around, it gets in the way. And you can have all your tools in front of you instead of standing off to the side. It's all, for people who've never done small work and they've done giant bowls and everything, it's difficult to grasp the smaller handles sometimes. There's been people who want to put 16-inch handles on these little beading tools, and it doesn't work. Okay, so now we'll do some hollowing out. So I am going to hollow this with a negative rake scraper, and the reason I'm going to do that is because it's docile and it's easy. If you want to make boxes fast, and I got much faster at it, like we used to supply boxes to galleries, you have to learn how to go fast. If you spend 4 hours making a box and you sell it for 75 bucks, you didn't make very much money. But if you make one that you can sell for 125 bucks and you make it in 2 hours, you did pretty good. So the fastest way to do it is to drill a depth hole and take a spindle gouge and hog the thing out in about 2 minutes or less, and then clean it up. The biggest problem is Tim here. Where's Tim Bartholomew here? There he is. Did you bring your box? So the reason I advocate this, because the most difficult thing for new box people is getting that little nub out of the bottom. So if you just hollow the thing out, by the time you get down to the bottom, you have kind of developed your own little technique to get the nub out. Whereas if you drill a depth hole and you go down and hog it out, and then you try cleaning out and making the bottom all pretty, you usually end up going through the bottom. There's a wonderful story from one of our sawdust sessions that Tim had a piece of wood. I was showing him how to make a box, and I noticed that the wood got to be a different color at the bottom, and I had gone through the bottom, showing him how to not go through the bottom. So he usually brings that to everything we do. I have a tendency maybe to cut a little above center. I mean, you really can hog out a box in 5 minutes or less if you really strong arm it. But For new people, you want to practice on your finesse and your control and getting that little thing out of the middle. And what makes these negative earth scrapers so wonderful is the fact that you're not having to have an iron grip on the tool because the thing's not going to get ripped out of your hand and dig in or catch. You can go past center all the way there. You can go up like this. If you took a flat top scraper and you did this, you know what would happen? So none of that stuff happens. And I know there's still people out there that like refuse to change. There used to be a bad omen about the whole scraper thing. If you knew how to use gouging, you would never need to use that, and on and on and on and on. You know, a lot of people just want to make stuff for fun for their family and friends. They're never going to be a professional wood turner. They're never going to spend 15 years of their life mastering gouges. So sometimes it rubs me wrong that all these professional turners keep ranking on people that don't have gouge skills when they're not professional turners. You guys just want to make stuff for fun. Shouldn't you have something that makes it easy? So you have a tendency when you hit that nub, automatically have a tendency to clamp down on the tool to make the nub go away. And even though I teach this, I still have a tendency to clamp down on it. If you loosen up your grip and you just let the tool float around, you can find exactly where the middle is. And then you can get it. One downside to the negative brake scraper is it doesn't stay as sharp as a standard tool, but the benefit of its ease of use is worth it. So I'm going to show you how I sharpen mine. I have a block of wood on this platform so that it brings it up more towards the center of the wheel. I sharpen mine upside down because it drags out a longer, better, gnarlier burr. Yeah, that's right. Because people always want to know this. It just doesn't, it never made sense to me that you want a burr coming up your tool to cut, and so you're going to stick it into a grinding wheel going the other way. How does that make a burr? This way, it makes a nice burr. You have constant pressure that is going into the wheel already. You don't have to worry about it sliding down, and it's really simple. That's it. The tool's sharp. That's how hard it is. So I have a tendency to sharpen more than I need to because the sharpness scale is when you first sharpen is here, and the tool may still be completely sharp all the way down to here, but this little area up here, the tool is like, I mean, it's in a different class. So I like to keep mine up in this little area, so I sharpen more than I need to. You certainly do not have to sharpen that much. The more you sharpen, though, the less you have to sand. What's that? Yeah, so you don't have to. I have an in. Is there anybody? There's a few people here when I joined up. Remember, Roger, I was afraid to even stand in front of anybody. I scheduled the demonstrators for a while. I had to hide behind people. It was horrible. First time I introduced somebody, I came up and said, oh, this is so-and-so. He makes really cool stuff. I hope you like it. And I almost ran back to my chair. So this club's been awesome. This club, oh, the tool edge, yeah. Yeah. So what makes a negative brake scraper is the negative angle going down on the top. Anybody that's a back in the old days, anyone that's used a radial arm saw, you know as soon as that saw contacts wood, that thing wants to run at you and overfeed and come into it. So what they did is they developed a negative angle blade, radial arm saws and for sliding miter saws where the teeth are tilted back just a little bit and the tool will not want to overfeed. This is the same principle. I'm not a physicist. I'm not even going to try to explain to you like all the complicated, like why they work. They just work. And there are different types. Some people call a negative rake scraper basically a skew on the side. It'll have a 30-degree bevel and a 40-degree bevel on the top. And that is fine, and it works, and it takes a really fine cut, but it lasts about 20 seconds. And there is no versatility to it because when you're hollowing this way, if you go past center, that thing is going to grab. If you go above center, it's going to grab. And they're not user-friendly. They're kind of a cleanup tool only. These are much more versatile. And there's different burrs. I have a tendency to use mine kind of straight off the grinder burr. When I'm having a difficult piece of wood that I have a hard time finding to cut smooth, that's when I start messing with the burr. So I will hone the burr off, I'll roll a burr, I'll try different things. Some woods work best, exotic woods work best with basically no burr. So some woods love you to hone the burr off back and forth so that there's absolutely no burr. And like African blackwood loves no burr. And I will pass this around. You will see if you take one of these tools and you hone the burr off both ways, this isn't bullshit. This is off the cut. And you can see starting, there'll be 400 grit sanding, 600 grit sand, 800 grit, and it still isn't as smooth as this was off the tool. Now this is a box that bounced across the floor because I jammed it on the jam chuck too tight and broke the tenon, so it's a teaching aid now. But that's the cut you can get off of a tool if it's tuned right. You're not going to get that on our local maple. You're not going to get that on this eastern maple. But exotic wood, you can get that. The top bevel is 20 to 25, and the bottom bevel is a 70. And if you're off a few angles either way, it isn't that big of a deal. Moving your platform back and forth an eighth of an inch is going to change your angle by 3 to 5 degrees already. So I don't get super caught up with the degrees. Honestly, I freehanded everything. I freehanded this on the top of a wheel for years. And when I started making tools is when I actually finally measured the top, and it came in at 20 degrees. So that's what we stuck at. It just seems to work. It's a good compromise for durability and cut and ease of use. I mean, you can see it's super easy to use. Hollowing's never fun because you can't see in there. And don't be afraid to try different stuff. This one isn't too bad, but there are some types that have a deeper shoulder. So you can put your lead in reverse, and you can use the other end of the tool, which has the left-hand curve to it. And instead of trying to hollow with your handle all the way out here, you can put it in reverse, and you can like see what you're doing and make things a whole lot easier. Sometimes it's easier in reverse. I've never had anything fly off in reverse. I know people wig out about it, but it's something to think about. There's a reverse on there for more than just sanding. What are we doing on time? Okay. Okay, now I've gotten rid of that little nub. There we go. It's kind of almost like a bowl. I mean, you can come in and you can start at the bottom, you can pull out, you can start at the top, you can go in, kind of the same thing. It's less movement. So, yeah, this lathe only goes to 3250. If it would go to 4,000, I'd have it at 4,000. It's a 3-inch piece of wood. Questions? Somebody's got to have questions. There's the middle. So this is a demo box. I'm not going to hollow this all the way out. Usually I have an idea of what something needs to be, and I'll put a line here somewhere where I think the bottom's going to be, and I check it periodically as I go down. If you drill a depth hole, then when you hit the bottom of the hole, you're there. If I'm roughing out a whole bunch of things, usually for boxes, I rough out like a bunch of them at a time, and then I let them sit, kind of like bowls when you turn green bowls. The deal with boxes is even if your wood is totally dried and it's been sitting on the shelf for 20 years, once you turn it and release the tension in the wood, it's going to move around on you. So usually for boxes, you rough them out and then you come back and do them in a month or a week or a year. I have some I glued up 10 years ago that I haven't got to, that I find in the shop. So I'm going to pass around this box of, this is what roughed out boxes look like. I write on them, like, because when you get back to it, I may not remember what I was going to actually do with the shape. So these tiny little boxes have these super little beads that beading tool doesn't exist anymore. So I have written on here, first generation, 16th bead. I've ruined some boxes going back and using the wrong beading tool. So if it's a critical little thing and something that's not out of the norm, I write on here. I forget what stuff is going to be later. So this is what it would look like when you first glued it up. And like, I can never remember why I parted it and why I did the proportions the way I did. So it's written on here, OPCAAW box. So that's this box. So I know that I glued this because I might finish this 2 years after I glue it up or whatever. So I know what it was going to be instead of just looking at it like, well, why did I do that? It's written on here. This is what it's going to be. So I'll pass this around. You can see you can do pretty big stuff on this. Just remember when you first start turning and you're always worried about sanding and using 80 grit. These are all off the tool. All the beginning people, if you keep your tools sharp and keep cutting wood, they'll get smoother, and at some point in life you won't have to use that 80 grit sandpaper anymore. Okay, so I'm gonna call that quits for now. And I'm gonna work on the lid. Three beads are harder to do than 2 beads. We're going to do 2 beads tonight because it's easier. The one thing I do is use a pair of calipers. First off, I hold it up to the light to make sure that my tenon is parallel. It's tapered just a little bit, but that's okay. So I will make this one little line smaller. so that I know when I get my hole, it's going to be smaller than this tenon. This is the one time when I'll actually turn the leg down. There we go. So this will help you speed that whole process of, you want to take a file and round these tips over a little bit so they're not sharp. So, can you guys see those little lines? This helps you a lot. Those two little, that little, can you see that? Well, I'm completely backwards. There we go. So, I know when I cut to that line, I'm safe. I did the line on the wrong side. I forget which club it was at. And I cut the thing too big. Do you remember that? Was that the Seattle club? I had the stupidest look on my face. So I have a spare one of these in case I screw up, because it happens. Okay. So you just want to face off. I prepped this first, so you want to make sure this is round. You want to face off your face. Same. Well, I kind of. Shit, I forgot about the bead thing too. We've been super busy. I did not practice for this. So usually I make one the day before or that morning. But so I've set my calipers to just outside of this bead. I always taper my beads inward so I know if I hit this, I'm still good. These things are going to take forever to do in the beginning. And they're not for everybody. If boxes were easy, you'd see them everywhere. You can't really sand the box into submission. This is when I usually practice, like, my left hand. Don't do that. This is where I usually practice my left hand gouge skills because I don't use my left hand very much. But there's a way, since I started doing production stuff, I just made a tool that makes that cut. And it's a lot easier. Doesn't nick the side of the bead. There we go. Okay. Oh, I got a long ways to go. Is everybody bored yet? When you make something to do a special job, it makes everything easier. This doesn't nick the bead. Originally I had modified a Sorby tool to do this, that was bigger, but I made one with one opposite on the other end, so when I have this flipped on the box, I can modify it. We should be getting pretty close. Alrighty, well, I went too far, but that's not going to be bad. We can always change this bead shape too. Okay. basically we start over again and do the same thing, so. You see, it doesn't take long when your tooth is sharp. You've done it a couple hundred times. I never hollow to that line. I hollow out the lid to make a dome shape inside, and then I use the lid recess tool to make a straight line for my fit to my tenon. The lid doesn't take very long because you don't have to go as deep as the body. We're getting pretty close, so you can see there's no nub in there, and you could start sanding this at 320. If I sharpened it again and made some little light passes, you'd probably start at 400. The reason for making your lid cuts as smooth as you can is anyone who's tried it enough, exotic wood, some woods are impervious to it, like madrone is beautiful. You can get that stuff as hot as you want, it won't crack. Our local big leaf maple, if you have a bunch of tear out in your lid and you try sanding that out, as soon as the wood gets hot, it does what's called a heat check, and there'll be these lines across the grain, and no amount of CPU in the world will ever fix that. It'll fill the cracks, but you'll still see them. So if you learn to cut clean, you can start sanding at a much higher grit. The slower you sand, the faster you sand. I usually don't run the lathe at all, or if I do, I run it at 100, 150 RPM. And I have made bunches of special little mandrels for sanding the inside of boxes. I can pass some of them around, but this is when I will sand and finish the inside of the lid before I make the lid recess cut. Because if you try sanding and finishing it afterwards, guess what? You get stuff on the recess cut, the sandpaper usually. I have forgotten before, and it's a pain to wrap tape around there to sand and finish that. So this is when I would sand and finish the lid now. So I have come up with all these nifty little sanders. I never power sand the outside of a box. Ouch. So this is stuff that you can't buy, but everybody that has these sanding mandrels at some point in time, there we go, the Velcro wears out. And don't throw it away, save it, peel the Velcro off. And you can take a spindle gouge or a piece of 80 grit sandpaper, and you can shape this thing to whatever shape you want. And then there are these old school, every carpenter knows about them, these little drill bit extensions that have the Allen screws in them. They're hard to find now because they've all gone to this fancy little collet that slides back. You can find these on Amazon. So you can shape your mandrel head however you, it's opposite what you think. So this is probably my 4th or 5th generation one here. Originally I started using the sticky Velcro and that works okay. But when you go to, because your Velcro wears out, when you go to change the Velcro, it sticks to the foam too good and you ruin your thing. So I've come up with the best stuff is at Home Depot. They have stuff in a roll. I've cut this down. I think the roll is 1.5 inches wide or 1 inch wide. And it's double-sided. It's got the hook on one side and the loop on the other. And you just put yourself a couple of X's on there. I've tried taking a big sheet and cutting little V's and trying to make a ball-shaped thing. This will hold all the sandpaper you need. And after you shape this, stick it in your little drill bit extension and then wrap some electrical tape around it so that this doesn't bang up your wood. And this is like little, if you do have little nubs, this will eliminate your little nub immediately as soon as it touches it. You can't buy these. And this is the coolest little sanding mandrel ever. Just take some scissors or tin snips. You can cut little slits in your paper and it'll go right here. And literally my drill spinning at 50 RPM, even on this big lathe, will turn the thing. You do have to replace it occasionally. The reason you want to sand slow is as soon as you go over 100 RPM or any faster, anybody knows, once it spins on the Velcro, this isn't sticking back on there. So you want to go really slow, and literally it takes a minute or two max. I will start at 320 or 4, and I always go to 6 on the inside, and then I use a wax, but I will pass these around because you can see this is like the beginning of one. I should have cut this longer. There's the company Vince's Wooden Wonders. He sells the coolest little sanding mandrels. This is actually a bought sanding mandrel that has a little tiny piece of Velcro on the end, but it's perfect shape for making one of these little mandrels. Here's one that I started that I only did one piece on so that you could kind of see. I made this for the little tiny boxes I do. This would actually get another piece to go around and it would get taped. These are super easy to make, and these are the absolute coolest sanders for the inside of this stuff. And you'll sand your stuff like that. You can sand the shoulder coming out. If you got a bigger box, you can put a 3-inch piece of paper on here instead of a little 2-inch piece. And they work fantastic. And it's something that is made out of something that you would have thrown away, and they're super easy to make. Trust me, Vince's little sanding person that he has, his little engineer, tried to come up with a way of making them and to have them like that, and he couldn't, but they're super simple to make. So I would sand that. Most of my boxes are finished with this stuff, so this is all I ever use on the inside. It's some wax that has a little abrasive in it. I think it's pumice. It works super good. It's pretty much what the inside of every box I make. This is what I use, and I stop at 600. I think the inside of the box should look as nice as the outside. In the beginning, that's not gonna happen. Stuff's a little stinky, but in 20 years, this is my second can, so this stuff will be a lifetime thing for a lot of people. It works great. It works on bigger stuff too. So that pretty much is what that's pretty much what I use. That's the only thing that's on this box. And you can see the inside is the same as the outside. The reason I have a tendency not to like film finishes is because when these things feel as nice in your hand as they feel, you have a tendency to play with them. And if it's got a film finish on it, it's better with a great shine on it, but the wood feels, super soft in your hand. Yeah, wood turning is supposed to be tactile. So I put this chunky finish on there that's gonna chip, and you can fix it. If it's a lacquer, you can fix it, but if you just polish up the wood and use wood that polishes nice, then you're good to go. I'll pass that around. So that's finished with that wax. So now I would sand and do the finish on that, and then I will go ahead and make the lid recess cut. So this is when we would use our recess cutter. It's just an angled, and it's got 45 across or a 90-degree across. And they're not sharpened on the side and across is because if you keep doing it, it goes in and it gets weird after a couple years of sharpening. So if you have problems visualizing this angle parallel, just hold it to the lathe beds at that angle, and you kind of know that that's the angle that you're going to be. It's a small cut. I'm not supposed to use tools out of the handle. Don't worry about it if you make it too big. It's going to happen at some point. We should be fine. So I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger and then I'll be done. It's much easier to fit the tenon to the lid than it is the other way around because you don't have to keep moving the tool rest each time. I think we're good there. I put just a little chamfer on it. I do check it with the calipers to make sure that that recess is parallel. It'll bug you later if it's not. We're pretty good. No questions? Did like half the people leave or what? Is it that boring? It's giving me a complex, man. I don't know why I put that back on. These little manuals are much easier to screw on and off than a chuck too, and everything looks different like this than trying to turn your head all the time and look at it. So now we would have that finished. So we put the body back on and we fit our tenon to the lid. And this can take 3 or 4 tries, or it can take 40 tries, depending on your patience level. And as soon as you get impatient and go too far, that's when it doesn't fit. This happens more times than you will ever know. You just take little baby steps. So what I do is I chamfer that end and I put a slight taper on it. And that eases me trying to go. I might have tapered it a little more than I should have, but so I know I'm coming up on the taper a little bit, so now I don't know that the camera can see that. I cut maybe a 10-degree taper there, and I'm just starting to hit it, but I put a little chamfer on here as well, so I can take that tenon away down to that, and I know I'm safe. Doing a taper and cutting it down to, instead of just going straight in each time, you can cut your fit time in half. Put a little one back on again. And anybody that doesn't think spinning 2 pieces of wood together real fast is going to start a fire, you should try and put this on with the lathe spinner. Even at 50 RPM, the thing is going to smoke and catch on fire almost immediately. So I've actually slid up on that little taper I cut. Okay, I can see it on the monitor, so you can see it. Right. It's like 8 degrees maybe. So now I can taper it a little bit more. I know if you do a lot of these, this can go pretty fast because you know where you're able to go. Okay, I can be a little more bold. Not too much though, because as soon as you do, as soon as you get tired of turning the lathe on and off, is when you screw it up. And you notice me flipping the tool around because it kind of pushes the burr down a little bit. This is basically a straight skew, and the reason that it is shaped like that instead of the other negative rake scrapers is because I'm doing the lid bit, so I can take a much finer cut. It doesn't last very long, but you can literally take, you know, 1,000th off at a time. It's not usually this quiet. You could go for it, man. So another way too is burnish it. So I do have sharp tools. So if the light's right, you can see where I burnished the wood a little bit. So you know how much meat is there. We've still got at least 10 or 15 thousandths probably at least that we can take off still. But don't get too happy because as soon as you do, and at some point you will get tired of turning the lathe on and off. So I'm tight, so I'm going to take a little more off. You can always make your tenon parallel, but if you start with a taper, you always got a little bit left at the bottom. A little bit more. I'd say 15 to 20 times is probably the normal amount of times it takes for turning the lathe on and off. So I got a little cut happy, so that's a decent enough fit. It's good enough for jam chuck. Actually, I think it tightens up. I don't know if it's because I have more humidity in my shop. Usually it's around 65, the humidity level. I've had them too loose. They seem to, every wood's different too though. It could be, if you take this, like some of these, it'll be a different fit from here to your house. And that's like the worst thing traveling with boxes. As soon as you go to a different climate, you may not be able to get the lids off for a couple days. So you can see how the beads are even. I taper my beads, so I will make this top bead smaller. But now I have my lid fit. That's honestly the hardest part of the whole box. I will shape the body now, and then I know how to proportion my lid. So now we get to use like my favorite tool. And people seem to be absolutely terrified of these things because it is kind of wicked looking. The straight spear point, there we go. We have the little detail tool in the Boxmaster line. It has a straight spear on one end and a curved spear on the other. So when Brad did his ornament demo, you've seen him use a bigger spear to kind of refine the outside shape a little bit. A straight edge will refine an outside edge much better than a curved edge will. I probably should have gotten that whiteboard, but I didn't. So you have a round surface this way, and you want to refine that shape on the outside of a bowl, a hollow form, or a little box. Refining an outside shape this way with another curve that curves the other way, how does that work? You can do it, but you end up with a lot of tool marks. You're moving, there's a ton of handle movement. If you have a straight edge, there's virtually no hand, there's a lot less handle movement. You could also use a square end one, but I used to spindle gouge all these things, and now, honestly, you'll see how long this takes. And there's absolutely, even though this looks scary, there's absolutely no fear of this thing digging in. And some old timers might think that's cheating or whatever, but did you see how easy that was? You can also come back over here and get next to the bead. But see how, because the edge is straight, there isn't the handle movement that there would be with the curved surface. There's more contact on the wood because the area is straight instead of being curved. And you can get a pretty much a ripple-free finish if you have a little finesse. I could, what's that? I'm at center approximately. You know, I mean, we used flat scrapers for so long, sometimes you still have muscle memory, like pulling up a little bit, and sometimes you'll see the rolling up on the side a little bit. It's probably just because, you know, that's how you did it for so long. That's how you found an easier way. That's the problem with carbide tools. The cutters are so small that it's almost impossible to get a smooth surface with it because that little tiny little thing leaves a little bit of ripples. So that's kind of our body shape. You see now, that was ridiculously simple, wasn't it? So now we will work on our lid. We'll make this bead smaller. For a long time, the biggest problem I had with the beaded boxes is they always looked funky, the join, because your mind says the two beads should be the same size, because that's how they should be, right? Well, they look funny. And it didn't happen until I kept nicking the bead one day, and that top bead kept getting smaller, and then your best designs, I know it's cliche and everybody says it, your best designs really do come from your mistakes. I kept nicking the bead and it kept getting smaller and smaller, but then when I put it back together, it's like, oh, that looks like the way it's supposed to be. So I have like a couple of boxes of beginning boxes I don't show people, and you can see the beads are the same, and just, you know, the lid looks a little weird. It doesn't flow right. It doesn't have to be a lot smaller, but it completely changes the look. And also you want to back cut this a little bit so that the face of your beads will join up better. Okay, so we're tapered now. And just the flow is a lot better, way better. So I know it's opposite art. Anyway, I don't know if you can see that really well, but with the top bead being smaller than the bottom bead, it continues the flow of your curve, and then I bring it back out. There's no secret the way I have that other flow is because your hand grabs the lid better. So So now we've proportioned that. We're good. It's easier to see your stuff like this, looking at it straight on, than always doing this, trying to. So I need to change my flare. I need to work on the lid. So you can imagine if you have that big chuck and you're screwing that chuck on and off, it can be clunky. So I know this flared too much, so I'm going to change the flare a little bit. We're going to kind of do the same thing again. I mean, this is just, how can you not like that? And that's literally sticking that point. You can push on this as hard as you want with the lathe. Harshest lathe only goes to 32. This is a tool everyone's terrified of until they see it being used, and until they use it, then you gotta have one. Okay. I think that's about right. Change it just a little bit, not much, we're just about there. We'll soften this lid fit later, but you want it tight right now so that you can jam chuck and finish the lid. And jam chucking is pretty much the essence of box making. I remember when I started, I wanted Dave to do a demo on jam chucking because it looked so hard to do, and I'll never forget that laugh. You know, like, well, what am I going to do for the other times? He's like, dude, that's going to take me 5 minutes or less. I'm like, no, it's got to be difficult. It's not. It's just making the wood fit. Change our curve just a little. Okay. I can part this off now. I would sand this bead if it needed sanding, and then I would sand this part right here and finish this curved part. So, where's Ray at? Is Ray still here? All right, Ray, remember the parting tool thing? Ray, we'll school you on the parting tool, man. Everyone does it. I went to Dave's and told him I didn't like this parting tool. He told me I wasn't using it right. Follow him, like he always does. And he was right, I wasn't using it right. This parting tool does not like to be stuck straight into the wood. It just doesn't. It's tapered, it's a trapezoid. It's never to be used upside down. It could actually break. It looks like that's the way you would use it. Just even the people that machine these tools for me thought the tool was used like this for 10 years until I'm like, no, it's like this. So it does not work very good sticking it straight in. It likes to come in at the top and then the roll into the cut, and you basically ride the bevel on the bottom here and you slice a clean cut. And it's completely opposite of any standard parting tools that you just stick into the wood. And I mean, that's really how easy it is to use. It's easier, huh? I struggled with this for like over a year before I said anything, and I'm like, I don't like that tool, man. That tool sucks. Usually when they break, it's because they're used upside down. I mark them on both sides, and I tell people if the marking is upside down, the tool's upside down. So now to reuse this block, I would just face this block off and face it off square, and it will be ready for the next piece. All right, I'm gonna have to go. I'd show you how to do this, but I got 20 minutes, so. Not super tight. One way to help keep your lid from flying off is to have your tool rest like so it won't come off all the way. It can still come off, but it won't fly across. You can spindle gouge this. I kind of quit spindle gouging it because I usually go over it with the scraper, because the deal with gouges is as the bevel of the tool, as the heel of the tool rubs against the wood, it compresses the wood fibers. And if you don't get that sanded out, they show up as little rings in your finish. I call them compression rings because it's the wood fibers compressing and it doesn't accept the finish at the same rate. So since it's end grain, I just cut it with the tool. And you're pushing in this way too, it's less chance of the lid coming off. Got a little too much flare on it, I think. So, why I made the cutter on the other, going the other way too. You gotta be careful here because the lid's not super tight. There's been no questions from the Zoom people at all. Wouldn't be allowed to watch if you're not going to ask questions.
Yeah. Remember, some of us are in Arizona. We're later. Maybe we're tired.
What's that?
I said some of us on Zoom are in Arizona, and it's an hour later.
Yeah.
We're tired.
Arizona's the same time zone as us.
No, it's not.
Oh.
Only when you guys are on daylight savings time, because Arizona doesn't do daylight savings time.
Oh.
Rest of the time we're in mountain time zone.
I didn't know that. I guess I learned something new. Okay. Okay. So I'll expand and finish that. And now is when you soften the lid fit. Not very much, just a little. Honestly, I usually let them sit for a few days before I do the final adjustment. Like that's, you can see how it doesn't take very much to make a fit. That's actually that'll tighten up a little bit. What do you mean alignment of grain? Yeah, well, I mean, it's round right now. That's the whole reason you rough them out first too, is hopefully it gets rid of, and I've had boxes that have been completely round for 8 years, and then all of a sudden it ovals a little, and I do not know why. I didn't bring any of those to show people because they want to force the lid on. The lid still goes on great, it just, you have to put it on in oval shape, and that is the nature of wood. I'm not super artistic, so I focus more on the craftsmanship part of the whole box. So to do the final lid fit after a few days, I use 400 grit sandpaper, 320 is a little coarse, and 600 is too fine. And literally, I've done this enough that I can tell by the way it fits how many turns, but don't try sanding the tin, and never sand the tin with the lathe running. But if you take and curl the sandpaper like so, and hold it on the inside of the lid, I know what one rotation will do. I know what 2 and 3 rotations will do. You'd be surprised, sometimes 1 rotation is all it takes. And then you get that total glide on and glide off. For me, the whole box thing is totally all about the lid fit, how it just glides on and glides off. This is a 10-year-old box, and this one baffled me. I mean, I sold hundreds of boxes, and this one sat in the gallery for over a year, and no one bought it. So I wouldn't part with it now, even if someone did want to buy it. But this thing has retained its lid fit. This was in my first 50, but to me, that's how a box lid should fit. And it reminds me of where I was at because I don't make that shape anymore. So now you part the box off and you do the same thing to finish the bottom again. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of room here. There we go. On a really nice box, especially one with a super spendy piece of wood, now's when you want to stop the lathe and take your little Japanese saw or any saw and cut that final bit of tenon, that little tiny piece of wood that's left. Do not give it a twist. It can pull 1/8 of an inch out of your wood. There's no fixing that. I bring a little saw. Now you start the same thing over again. I would just use like that as a jam chuck. But I mean, I've made so many of these that I usually, as you can see, I usually have one that's pretty close. And
hey, Jimmy, what's the source of that metal piece that's on the headstock?
do what now?
What's the source of the metal piece that's on the headstock before the wood?
This?
Yes.
Oh, we make these.
Okay.
It's a mandrel. It's, well, for this lathe, it's 1 1/4 by 8, and then it has a 3/8/16 stud on it. Dan never made them in the larger size. He always made them in the 1 by 8 little ones. I mean, we make it. You can't buy it anywhere.
Okay, thanks.
You technically could, except for the steel is suspect, and the round face on them is so small that there's not, because you want this to be concave. I didn't bring one of the little ones because I was using the big lathe. Just, it's a great system. So I usually have one that will almost, like that one almost fits.
So Jimmy, is that mandrel on the lathe on your website?
No, because we have to make a video on it, how to like make the blocks and use them. We have them. There's a box of them back there on the table, but they're, I mean this?
Yeah.
Ask the question again. No. You have to call and ask for it, or you have to come over and get one. They will be on the website after I make a video how to use it. They're not on the website because without a video how to use it, I would just be saturated with emails and calls and questions. So, I mean, these things have been, in our area, these things have been around over 20 years. And this is what everybody used when I started.
So how much are they going to be?
The large 1 1/4 by 8s are $65 for the mandrel and then 2 glue blocks. And you can buy more glue blocks or you can make your own glue blocks. I don't know that I have enough time. I can show you how to make them. I can either show you how to make the blocks or I can finish jam chucking the bottom. Are they? It shows what I know. Okay. Sure. This is the small size. So we have these small, medium, and large. And then in the Boxmaster one, it's called the detail tool. It has a straight spear on one and the curved spear on the other. I just didn't bring that one because I like this little short one. But this is the same size as all of the small negative rake scrapers. We've got like 4 or 5 different ones. So you want me to show you how to make a block, or you want me to jam chuck the bottom of this? Make a block, all right. Because jam chucking the bottom is the same as this lid. I would turn this down. This would fit. I'd finish off the lid, blend this in, and then the thing will be done. So that's basically like your finished blocks. This needs to come in a little farther on the bottom. So I will show you how to make that. I only have 1 block of wood, so we'll see if I screw it up or not. They're easy to make, although there is, like everything, they're easy to screw up too. Come on, where's the, there we go. I know there's probably people in the club never saw, I mean, I hardly bring anything to show and tell anymore. I don't have time to turn very much. I'm sure there's people that didn't think I made anything on the lathe, but there was a time when I was busting out like 30 or 40 of these a month. So for all of you that don't know, that's where the whole Boxmaster thing came from. My obsession with the box thing. Okay, so. This is how I make the insertion tool. Starts off as an Allen bolt and 2 nuts. Cut the head of the bolt off. Grind yourself 3 flats on there so it doesn't spin in the chuck. Jam the nuts together. And that's my insertion tool. Super easy to make. I'm sure they will. How much does that cost? Huh? So Ralph said that the company that makes the inserts sells an insertion tool. I haven't seen one, so I have a tendency not to buy stuff when I can make it.
McMaster Car has stuff like that. That's where I get mine.
And there's different inserts. I'm going to use this brass one right now. My favorite ones were these ones by McFeely's that were steel. They had way gnarlier threads. And with this recess, the threads don't engage until farther down, so it's less spins to go on and off. And I mean, I probably made several thousand with these steel ones. And then some CEO genius decides to zinc plate the things, and I bought a box of 1,000, and the stupid zinc plating gives it no tolerance in the threads, and they suck to put in now. Even reaming a taps through it 5 times, it still doesn't have enough slop in the threads from when they were just steel inserts. So some genius took a perfectly good thing that there was nothing wrong with, tried to improve it, and made it worse. So these are ones with the zinc plating are harder to put in, so I am going to use these brass ones. You got to be the brass ones are a little more finicky because it's easy to peel the little straighted part off the side because it's very thin compared to this beefy thing, but you'll see how you just have to finesse it. So it's a 1/2 inch hole. This is the club, so. I am. Stable wood, it's plentiful. That's what Dan always used. Tried the Western maple, it's softer. So this piece of tape right here is a very high-tech depth gauge. You could probably get that in the catalog too, right? It's a very expensive high-tech depth gauge. Just turn the lathe down again, speed down. I make these like 100, 200 at a time. It's a pain just to make a couple. Okay. Yeah. Dan always had the blocks really long. I've systematically gone through all mine and made mine much shorter because it doesn't stick out from the headstock as far that way. I mean, you have these things all sizes. You can have them this 3-inch. This is like a little 2-inch. I have them down to these little tiny short ones and these little ones. Anybody that watched Tones do his ornaments and his finials, they're glued on a little block like this. They're not ever done in a chuck. Anybody that watched Dave do finials, they were never done in a chuck. You just have to have a little bit of finesse on this one is all. So I would stick some thin CA glue in there just to say I put glue in there. I don't know if it helps or not, but I always do it, and I just throttle the lathe. Wait a minute. You gotta put it in low to come off 0. High doesn't want to come off 0 very good. There we go. Operator problem. There was nothing wrong with the lathe. Okay, now you can come off 0 really slow. So I put it where the teeth are on there and the floor is a little slipperier. Make sure you got a good stance and you can put them in the impact gun too, but they don't necessarily go in straight all the time. Play the reverse. Uh-oh. Okay, this is not very... Someone needs to do some maintenance on the lathe, man. Get right on that, huh? Join our work party. Okay, so that's not super fluid. If your lathe is sticky like that, you should run this thing all the way out, clean it, and move it. So really, that's how hard they are to make. I set them a little deeper than they should be because you can always turn this down a little bit. I always make the block concave and the little mandrel is concave as well. So I do these, I'll spend the day and just make a whole bunch of them. Then you screw this on your mandrel and finish turning it out and then part it off. And once you have them, have them forever. I mean, I've got some that are pushing 20 years old. So they're pretty simple to make. So
What's the thread size on that?
3/8 by 16. It's a common bolt size. So any more questions or? Woohoo. What's that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised he did. Man, dude, he brought that thing to every function forever. Right now. Yeah.